Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn, and I am grateful you're here. You're listening to the Starting with Gratitude podcast. This is a safe space intended to host meaningful conversations exploring all topics of the human experience. Every conversation starts with gratitude and remains rooted in gratitude. After you listen, make sure to join the community by subscribing and sharing. I am so happy you have joined us. Hi, Yavez.
Hi.
How are you feeling right now in this moment?
Feeling very grateful, healthy, and good in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And healthy is something to feel really good about because health is wealth.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling also very grateful. And today has the to-do list that I've had on my list today has felt like very fulfilling. So I'm happy about that.
That's good.
And before we get into our conversation, I'm going to ask you to share with us what it is that you feel grateful for.
So when you asked me the question, what I'm most grateful for, I had to think about, I'm like, what am I grateful for? There's a lot of things in life to be grateful for. And then I had a conversation with my mom that day, and I kind of realized I already knew, but I was like, oh, mom is my best friend. And that's something I'm really grateful for. I know a lot of people don't have that because of course, a generational gap. Me and my mom have that, and I'm really grateful for that. So, yeah.
How is it, you're from Amsterdam, correct?
Right.
And your family is still there?
Yeah, still there.
Okay. How has it been for you living in the States, but having your family like in a whole other part of the world?
You starting off with the heavy questions. It's good. I don't have a lot of family, so I have my mom, my sister, and my grandmother, and my mom had me when she was 19. So she always told me that I have to pursue what I wanted to do. And for the longest, I didn't want to leave because I felt like, not to say it like that, but I felt like I'm the man of the family and I want to like be there to help out however I can. And I've always done that, because my sister is 10 years younger than me. So I always like take care of my sister. But yeah, it was pretty hard to like make that step to be like, hey, I'm leaving. Not indefinite, but more, the plan was to be like here 60-70% of the time and then back there for like 30-40. Corona kind of fucked that up. I don't know if I can curse in this podcast.
Yeah, you can.
So yeah, it's been hard. I've been calling them. I call my grandmother every Monday and Friday religiously, 12 p.m. And then I call my mom every other day. And
Yeah.
it feels like a very modern way of keeping in touch with your family. I've never had that. I've never been this far away from home for a long time. So it's rough, but it's also something to look forward to and to like feel that connection isn't dwindling down just because of the distance.
That's beautifully said. And yeah, being so close to your family and having people to miss is something to feel grateful for in itself, because a lot of people don't have that, like for myself, to be completely honest, like I just started having a more close connection relationship with my mom. And especially I feel like as we get older, it's something that we just cherish more and more. So I'm glad that you have that with your mom. I feel like for you to move away from your family and into like another country, and also I'm sure there was like a whole process for you with the visa and like work and all that. I feel like you have to be very, very motivated and driven to like make it happen. So what is your like motivation? Like what's your fuel essentially?
I think the fuel, like I said earlier, like my mom was 19, so she never had a life as in that she wanted to travel. She works at an airline as a ground stewardess. that's the right term. So she always wanted to travel and see the world, but because of me being in her life, and it was hard for her to do that. And she always encouraged me to like not have a family too young and just live my own life, and like don't don't think of just because this is where you're born, this is where you should end up.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like, I feel like all the effort she put in me and all the sacrifices she made for me fuels me to like make her experience the world through me. For
Mm.
example, I went to Brazil and then she came to visit me, or she came to America to visit me. Um, yeah, and I feel like I owe her that, to enjoy my life because of all the work she done. You know, like I don't want to like not enjoy my life. Not only for her, also for myself, of course, but more like I want those sacrifices to be worth something. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's my biggest fuel, to just follow my dreams and do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You moved, if I'm not mistaken, to New York not long before the pandemic happened.
September or October. Yeah.
Yeah.
2019.
How has, like, what was that experience like for you? I mean, newly living in New York and then the world changes.
It was rough. It was far away from home. All my friends were back in Amsterdam. Luckily, I had some loved ones here, like friends and stuff. But it was it was definitely rough on me. I think I'm just starting to realize how rough that was.
Mm,
Um, as in, like, I'm starting to feel like my old self again, because I feel
mm,
like I just put on autopilot for like a year, if that makes sense.
mm,
I did enjoy it. There was like a lot of cool moments that happened during that time, but I feel like I travel so much and I like to be out as much as I can. So for me, it was really hard to just like be grounded and like be at home by myself or with friends and stuff. But I think that in a way it was also good for me to just be distanced from everybody and just to like feel how I feel and like not be distracted by the things in life that might distract you.
mm.
So yeah, it was a challenge, and I've had many times that I thought about giving up and just going home, but I also like a challenge, and it's like standing in a line for something. At some point, I'm not backing out, so I was like, nah, I'm not backing out right now, so I might as well just keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely one of those people where it's like if I start watching a show or like a movie and it's not that good, but I'm already like halfway through, I'm like, I have to finish this.
Same, same.
What like what has living in New York City been like for you compared to how Amsterdam is?
Ooh,
I've never been to Amsterdam, so I honestly like have no idea what it's like.
it's pretty similar, to be honest. Um, same. I would say that there's a fast pace to Amsterdam too, but it's very more relaxed, and I can only talk about the creative industry because that's where I'm mainly in, or like that's the people I surround myself, not by choice always, but more like, that happens.
Mhm.
And in that sense, it's pretty similar. I think the experience I have in Amsterdam is that people are more down to earth and more relaxed about things, and less what do you do type situations. I Yeah, and that's, I think the down to earth thing is the biggest difference. Besides that, there's not a lot of difference. It's really big out here. That's something I had to get used to. Like how many, like one borough could be Amsterdam, for example.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, just to grasp that idea of like it's really big out here, but also having not really the option yet to explore as much as I want to,
right.
because of COVID, of course, and because for me, like I like New York, but I really want to see the other sides of America more too. Because I don't know, I've always watched American movies and like and shows, and it's something I'm always really fascinated by, like that run down America, like that image of like middle America where nothing happens and time stands still type situation. I love that.
Hmm.
And just to see it as a just to see if my imagination is true to that spot. The same I had with LA. It was like, oh, the first time I've been was like, wow, this is so cool to see that GTA is pretty right how this place is. Or like
Yeah.
movies are pretty accurate. And I kind of like to see those resemblances that I have, like the imagination I have for that place, to see if that's true or not. And New
Hmm.
York has been really cool with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered the question, but
No, it did. It did. How would you, I mean, your work is very visual, right? And I
yeah.
feel like for creatives who have a lot of visual work, like their artistry is focused on like perspective, and how would you say that where you're from influenced your style of how you express your vision?
So basically, because Amsterdam is such a small city and there's a lot to look inward, but there's more to look outward. I as a kid
Mm-hmm.
was always fascinated by like how big the world was and how small Amsterdam was compared to that. So I always was really fascinated by different cultures, different cities, different ways of living, and I think that kind of sparked my fascination with like traveling, or how I look at the world and how I want to capture it. I'm a very adventurous person, I would say, not as in like mountain climbing and all that stuff, but more as in like I'd love, my favorite thing to do is just to go to a city I've never been to by myself and just figure it out.
Mm.
And I've done that with New York. I've done that with Japan. I've done that in Brazil. And I think I think coming from such a small place, that really encouraged me to like look what's out there. Because there's a lot at
Mm-hmm.
home, but there's also the for me there was this little itch of there's more though. I think that helped
Yeah.
me capturing things, because I just want to show my mom too, and my sister. But it also, I think a lot of my creative work comes from curiosity, um, whether that be
Mm.
photography or graphic design that I used to do, or typography. It's all this like fascinations I have from things I've seen, whether that be in Amsterdam or from a different country or a different city or whatever. And I think that fuels that energy of like, I want to figure that out, or I want to see it, or I want to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really quick, I just like made a connection to something. You mentioning that you were into typography work.
Yes.
The typography, I don't know if you select it with your videos that you direct, but the typography that shows up in all your videos is so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
So it makes sense that you have somewhat like of a background in that as well. But I grew up also in a very small town, and I feel like, well, you said small city, but I grew up like in a very, very small border town.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like when you grow up somewhere that feels small in any way, you either grow up very curious about the world and adventurous in the sense of you want to go out and see what's out there and explore,
Mhm.
or you kind of grow up feeling just like very comfortable with where you're at and just kind of want to stay in that like small
Yeah.
space.
It has two sides to it. It has two things are possible in that sense. Yeah.
What's your favorite way to kind of study a subject when you like take on a new project?
I think the first thing I do is, so I have this folder on my computer with, I think, tens of thousands of images that I just collect every morning or over the years. First thing I do, let's say it's a music video, I just listen to the music and I just go through that folder and put everything in a Keynote deck and just like see what's interesting to me or appealing to me. From there on, I start listening to the music with my eyes closed and just writing things down. I'm like, oh, this could be cool, that could be cool, and yeah, then I always like to like take 2 or 3 days just to listen to the music and feel how I feel, what kind of stories I imagine telling in that sense. Of course, with the given guidelines that the artist or the commissioner sometimes provides.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but like really sit with it and like I tend to like for example the Joyce Rice stuff, like a lot of these videos and ideas we've had for things, I can relate to it. So I love to like think of concepts or ideas that I can relate to, especially with songs. I love a good song. I love a good sad song too. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think when a song I have I can relate to it, it definitely helps me to like put my mind in that place and like think of things. And with
Hmm.
photography, it's very much um yeah, it is just going there, do my research, walk around in certain neighborhoods where that person might be from. And yeah, just go. Sometimes I also just wing it. Also,
Yeah. Would you say that you have like a favorite part in your process, like from concept to completion?
being finished.
Yeah. Like seeing
Yeah,
it all just kind of come together.
yeah. I love the whole process, but if I had to say my favorite moment is when I export the last edit and it's done
Yeah.
and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Or when I get the email that someone wants to work, that's also a very cool moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think sometimes while I'm creating, I just get in focus mode, so it's hard for me to enjoy it sometimes too.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of aspects that I just don't. Yeah, I would say enjoy might be the not enjoying might be the wrong thing to say, but it's more I don't think about enjoying. I'm just doing.
Right.
But the sense of enjoying something is when, oh, I got the email from this person yesterday and they want to work. Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Or or when I get that one idea that breaks open the whole thing and then no, this is the idea that's gonna win, or this is amazing, or like something. When I feel like that, or when it's done, that's the eureka moments for me. Definitely.
Hmm. Yeah. Your visuals are very nostalgic. Like they have that like nostalgia kind of feel. Where would you
Yeah.
say that like what is that rooted in?
I think back to my mom. She always used to play me her music that she loved to listen to, and same with movies and shows. And I think that's where my sense of nostalgia comes from. That like '90s, or even early 2000s. That yeah, I just been grow up with. Like I used to watch movies with my mom and shows with my mom as she was watching it too. And yeah, that was that. I really take that. I really appreciate that too. Like to see a different side of things. And I'm really happy that also my mom is very young, so we could like relate to more things as well.
Hmm.
And I think that's where that little nostalgia comes from in my work, because I'm trying to recreate those things I've seen, or let's say the images of romance I have in my mind from videos I've seen when I was younger. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to recreate that as best as I can.
Right. Yeah. Do you have like favorite films or music videos that like really inspire you visually?
That's really hard. So many movies. I get asked that question not all the time, but every time I get it, someone asks me, I'm like, I don't know, man. I like City of God a lot. That's a really cool movie to me.
Yeah, the coloring in that movie is so beautiful.
And I remember watching that movie as well as in like how the stories build up. I was like, wow, this movie is taking forever, but I love it. And it goes so many places. I think music videos, anything 90s.
Mm.
I'm just into. Yeah, I'm thinking if I can name something. I'm blanking. um, I love all the TLC music videos, all the Mariah Carey ones,
Hmm.
Leo ones. Yeah, basically all of that, like corner of time. That's very much interesting to me.
Yeah. The Common video that you recently directed kind of has that essence and it came out
Yeah,
really, really good.
thank
I loved
you.
it.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that was a really um cool experience to work with him first of all, but also to like him trusting me and what I had in mind to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm happy that I could have, pulled off what I envisioned with the song. Definitely.
Yeah. Would you say that you have like a project that you've worked on that is really close to your heart, that like was really personal to you?
Let me think. Let me think. Not really yet. Not yet.
Mm.
I feel like all these projects are really cool to me. I'm working on a documentary, my first thing ever, which feels like that, but because it's not there yet, it doesn't feel like, oh yeah, that's that. But I very much look at music videos as in like, of course, I'm super proud and like grateful and like happy, but it's not like, oh yeah, that feels like, yeah, not it's not a bad thing, but it's not like that. I'm tearing up whenever I see it or something.
Right. Yeah.
I'm very hard on myself too. With like, I like the work I make, but whenever I look at it, I'm like, okay, that could be better. Or and end of the day, it's still a commercial project, and that's something I'm trying to do less a little bit, and to do more like documentary based photography or directing, and telling more stories. Um, or maybe actually one project that is dear to my heart, as in like the way we approached the project, was the one for filling pieces, and we went to LA, and the concept was very much about barbershop culture, and we found this barber called Kev, who was over in South Central somewhere. I don't know exactly what neighborhood, but we had a really cool conversation with him about how he views the world, and like the whole concept was respect to all. I forgot.
It was I watched it recently. It was
What was that name?
res, respect the old, invest in the new, or something like
That's
that.
it. That's it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good shit.
Yeah.
Respect the old and invest in the new. And we basically asked him what that meant to him. And we just recorded that conversation. And that was for me like a feeling of like, wow, this is my first time doing a job in LA. Having the opportunity to meet someone I would never have met if I was, say, in Amsterdam, and doing a project that actually also doing a project with one of a really close friend of mine, Josh. He's also my sponsor. I met him in New York, and just to be over there with him and just sharing that situation with him, and like that was really cool to me. And yeah, when I think back of that project, I'm like, oh, we did that. Like that's a very much a project that sets the bar for me, as in that's what I try to accomplish every time. I also
Hmm.
have to know that's not possible every project, but that's definitely like the goal to get to, or even better, of course.
Yeah. The documentary that you brought up, as I told you earlier, I did listen to the podcast that you did with your friend, and you brought it up there as well. So I'm guessing you're talking about the documentary that you're filming in Brazil.
Yes.
And you don't have to like spill the tea, but you did mention that it was going to touch on like youth culture and
Yeah.
masculinity and LGBTQ. Um, I'm sure that with COVID and everything that happened last year, it kind of maybe halted that project a little bit for you.
Yes. So let me see, I've been there in 2018, and then as well in 2019, 2020. But the goal was to bring it out this summer because I wanted to go another time during COVID, technically. But it's pretty bad out there right now, so I have to halt it. Uh,
Yeah.
Fortunate for the people over there because it's pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely a project that I feel proud of because um, it's a project how I it's an example project for myself, as in like this is the type of project I want to deliver, or where I can use all my experience and interest into, as in like I did the typography, I did the concepting, and that's my advertising background maybe then, but just to like give this whole image or this whole thing to be a thing, if that makes sense. I'm shooting everything myself and getting the right people involved, doing it the right way, not trying to steal from people because I'm not Brazilian myself. I'm from next to Brazil, Suriname. But the first time I went to Brazil, it was the first time I felt really at home in a sense because being mixed as I am, I never really felt as in like, oh, I'm this or I'm that, and out there everybody's so mixed, so it feels very much as in like, oh, sometimes it doesn't really matter. Of course, there's still classism going on there, but
Yeah.
more in the sense of everybody's welcome. And yeah, and that's something I want to tell people, that I want to tell the world, that because I think a lot of people don't know that, or there's all these stories of people out there that people have no idea about. And I think me as well, when I went there for the first time, I thought about soccer, favela, samba, carnival, and all these stereotypes. But when I came there, it was all these amazing people and talented designers, sick photographers. I think ground pushing LGBT community compared to a lot of places in the world that are quote unquote the most, advanced in that. And yeah, it's something that I really want to share, and I want to share it in the right way. And that's why I'm working with all like Brazilian people out there. And yeah, and it's very much not about me. It's just me trying to give a platform for people to talk, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just shooting, I'm just capturing. And the plan is eventually, and that's maybe new for people to hear that because I think no one knows that yet. But at some point, I'd love to create like a foundation in that sense to like give back to the creative community or to the younger generations out there to like make some stuff or help wherever help is needed.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely,
Last time, sorry.
no, no, I can definitely see you doing that. And I feel like a lot of people who feel called or inspired to have a foundation or give back in a certain way are people who kind of had to teach themselves a lot and perhaps didn't grow up with the resources that they wish that they had. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that that's kind of how you feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I've always wanted to give back, but yeah, and I was like, this is the best way I can give back by doing what I'm good at. I'm pretty good at connecting with people, I think, too. And basically, I'm trying to use all my connections I can pull that make sense, of course, into this project to make it make sense.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that when it comes out.
Hopefully, summer 22. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. What would you say is like in regards to storytelling? What would you say is a story that you haven't told yet, but you like really want to?
Oh, I don't want to give too much away because people might steal my ideas. So, um, I think I'd love to, because wait, let me tell it differently. I'm trying to move out of commercial work and I want to go into more narrative work at some point. And I would love to make a romantic movie or something
Mm,
like that, or like not romantic maybe, but more as in like or like a romance, but more like a movie about life and whatever comes with that. And of course, love is in part of that, or ambition. And I love shows like Masters of None, or what else I love. But basically, Masters of None, for example, is very much about real life, and that's something that really inspires me. And I think there was a show on Hulu, and it was a little bit of the same. It was Egyptian Kid. Oh, I forgot. I'm blanking. Sorry, I'm really bad with names of shows and movies.
it's a,
But I love that perspective of a director or a writer that wants to tell a real experience. And that's something I'm trying to get more into, and like I'm like practicing writing a little bit nowadays too. Um, yeah, and I think just telling real stories doesn't have to be documentary per se, but telling a real story or having a real thing to share in a movie that people
Mhm.
can relate to. Yeah.
Yeah, the first shows that come to mind when it comes to like love and life are this one show that was like a limited series called Normal People.
I've never seen that.
Have you heard of that one?
No.
It's so good. It's, yeah, I highly recommend it. I recently found out that it's also based on a book. I didn't know that, but it's a really real story about a couple who like they each just have their own struggles, and you kind of see throughout the show how those struggles kind of manifest in their relationship. So it's really good. And then the other one that I highly recommend if you haven't seen it is called This Is Us. Have you heard?
Oh, I was, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hell yeah.
I'm still watching it, but like shout out to the writers of that because they have been able to come up with new characters and stories throughout the show in like a really amazing way. So the storytelling in that one is incredible. But
I've
yeah,
only seen
those
the trailer.
are the
The
first two.
trailer looks very interesting to me.
But
I'm backed up on shows and movies to watch, so I
yeah,
have to like go through it one by one.
there's so many. There's so
So,
many. You can't catch up.
there's one. I have one idea I want to do in the future, and that's more like not a biopic. I want to say biopic, but more of my experience with life. But that's like in the future.
Hmm.
But in short, like the stories about like my dad used to make porn,
Hmm.
and that was a very normal thing in the household that I grew up in. And I'd love to tell that story of me being confronted by that by him sometimes, or and how that affects my way of thinking about things sometimes. And I don't know. There's this whole story. I have this whole backstory about my life, but that's something I've always been keen to like share or see if people can relate with that.
Yeah. That's a very unique part of your story.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
like not something very, I mean, I think that's the first time that I hear of someone who has a parent who created in that world.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that I mean, I feel like it could have either gone both ways. Either, you know, your parent could have been very private about it, or you guys had like very open, honest conversations about.
Yeah, it was too confrontational, I think, personally, in that sense. Um it's one of the reasons why I started design, because he asked me to make banners and shit. So for me, I'm also in a way grateful, but it's something that I think it has a lot of interesting points of view in storytelling, I think, and that's something I'm like trying to write up and like see if that's interesting to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that would definitely be interesting for
Right?
sure. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, you moved to London initially, right? When you left home. And from what I heard when you were sharing that part of your story on the podcast with your friend, um, it was kind of like it was a big sacrifice and risk for you because you were just living off of your savings
Oh,
and
yeah, it really was. That was, I think, I just graduated, and I think I saved up, like, I had this side job at an agency, and I think I saved up like 10K euros. And my ex girlfriend at the time, my girlfriend at the time, needed to do an internship in London. And I was like, sure, I have to leave my apartment a student apartment I lived at either way in like 2 months. So I might as well go. I have nothing to do. I have no plans in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically chose to join her, quit my job, bought a camera, and I gave myself a year to see how far I can come. And if I didn't, I told myself, I wrote it down too, and I told myself, if I don't feel fulfilled after a year, you might just gotta get that day job back.
Mm.
And that's how the adventure started, actually. And it's been a hell of a ride. And I think on the last, I know that's a pivotal point of the story too. I think that in November or October, I had 1,000 left, and I swear to God, it's 1,000 left of the whole 10. And basically, I bought a ticket to go to New York by myself because I thought that was gonna make it happen, and I stayed at an Airbnb for a week, and then I had no plans for to stay, and it was just a whole mess. It was a whole ass mess. Me and my girl at the time didn't work out, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a bad place. I was still in New York at the time, and then Nike started want to work with me, and I went to Boston to do something for Bodega out there, and so I felt like, okay, it's going better, this and that, but I also felt like I'm not fulfilled yet. So I was really afraid of going home and being like, oh, am I gonna give up this, that? I'm pretty hard on myself. When I come back to Amsterdam, the relationship really ended, and I remember the next day, someone from Nike called me and was like, "Oh, we want you to do a campaign out there." And I was like, "Oh, damn! One door closes, one opens,"
Yeah.
and that's when I felt like, okay, cool. Nah, this is the sign I needed for myself to keep believing in what I believe in, not hesitating in my capabilities or possibilities. And yeah, I think from there on, I started believing in myself in that sense, as in like I can do what the fuck I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was.
Yeah, it always amazes me to like hear these stories of people who go after their dreams and just like take this like big risk, and then down to like when they think it's all going to like not work out or they're gonna have to like start over, it like ends up working out.
Exactly.
I don't know how visas work, but for anyone listening who may be wanting to work out of the country, like what advice would you give to them that you kind of wish someone told you when you were in that process?
Well, so when I came up with the idea, I want to move to America, and I asked this I remember asking this on Instagram, how does one move to America
Yeah.
without having a stable job and being freelance? And a lot of people said America's the hardest country to move to because of the visa situation, especially being a creative freelancer. And my biggest advice would be, even though if the odds don't look in your favor, just hit up an immigration lawyer and just ask around for an immigration lawyer. They know more than we do. They're different. They know
Yeah.
stuff. And I remember just listening to people's stories and like, oh yeah, my cousin tried it too and it didn't work out and was this amount of money. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
a lot of money for something that might not happen. So it's very discouraging sometimes to take advice from people that haven't done it, if that makes sense. Because a lot of people say no to you when I'm like, maybe that's a no for you, but not a no for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice would just to be, do your research, ask people that you know or your peers, or try to reach out to people that you've seen do it. And based on that, or besides that, talk with an immigration lawyer, someone
Yeah.
that's recommended, because a lot of finesses out there. But I think that's the biggest advice I can give. And I think for me, myself, what helped for me a lot is that I just put it on my 5-year plan, just to be like, oh, in 5 years, I want to be here.
Mm.
And I made it happen. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel like, I like that way of thinking of like just because it may have like that was your experience doesn't mean that that's exactly going to be my experience. And I do feel like if you are like you really persevere to make something happen, you can make it happen for yourself.
Yes. And that's how I think about everything in life. Like, if I really wanted, and I think my mom always told me that too, like, if you want something, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you gotta be realistic. Like, do you have the funding for something, for example, or do you need to do it? Or, but I think if it feels like that's something you want to accomplish in your life, I don't think there should be anything stopping you.
Yeah.
But that's also coming from someone that is in a sense privileged. So I don't know. I don't want to talk for everybody,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is this season that you're stepping into right now?
As in season,
Like your season of life. Like how would you describe the season that you're in?
huh? That's a good question. I've never been asked that question. I think it's the season of myself.
Hmm.
I feel like this is the first time in a long time that I feel like myself. I understand who I am. I understand what I like. I can pay for things that I like, and I can experience things that I like. And I'm very much in the now. I feel like I had a conversation with my homie that Henry in Amsterdam. He's in Amsterdam right now, and I remember walking around with him, and we would just like walk around the city with no money in our pocket, and just walk past people that are having fancy sandwiches at a little bistro or whatever, like cafe, and we're like, oh, it must be nice. And I think we were 16 at the time. We're like, one day, bro. And now that shit's normal, like, and I feel like I want to keep true to that way of thinking, or like being grateful and like understanding that I don't come from this, but I made it for myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being who I am right now, and like what situation I'm in right now, and like in what phase of my life, I feel really proud. In my mind, I made it, if that makes sense. I am not rich at all. I'm pretty broke still, but I feel like in the sense that I am doing what I love to do, and like I have no regrets. That makes me feel like I'm whole, if that makes sense. I feel very fulfilled and no regrets at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it feels like my life is just getting started, and I'm almost 30.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you feel that way. I feel like you deserve to feel that way. And like outside looking in, like you do look like very accomplished, which you are, and like looking at like the clients that you've worked with, the artists that you've worked with. And then when I just kind of started doing my research on you, like, of course, to prep for this, I just like realized just how humble you are. And I love meeting people like that, who just have that, like, I don't know, like, yeah, just are humble and very accomplished, but at the same token feel very proud of themselves because you did make it happen for you.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy you say that, because that's something that I always think of myself too, being humble, because that's for myself, like that's how my mom has raised me, to always stay humble. And what I've done in my mind, it's not that crazy. I'm just doing what I like to do. So I don't look at people differently that don't do something like me, or I actually like it more sometimes too. Like I love people from all types of life, or all form ways of life. And I think in the sense of like I believe that I can feel successful without the terminology of success for what everybody calls success. Of course I want a lot of money later, of course.
Yeah.
But I want to feel successful or happy before that. And it feels like I'm in the right in the right way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like headed down the right direction.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Earlier, we touched on, you recently moving to New York and everything that happened in 2020 and just kind of the difficulties that arise throughout that whole year for all of us. What would you say are like the lessons that you learned from that year that we all had?
So that you mean the year of COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because I feel like so many of us kind of had to confront ourselves in a way because we were in solitude most of the time, you know, with ourselves. And I feel like a lot of us realized things that we wouldn't have otherwise
uh,
realized without the stillness, you know?
what's something you realized? I'm just curious.
I One thing that I realized was I think I was just reminded of like what truly matters, you know?
Mm.
Like what truly matters both personally and professionally. I feel like in the stillness of work, I kind of remembered my passions in a sense, like things that maybe I was like too busy that I overlooked. I kind of like picked them back up again.
That's cool.
Um, and a bunch of other like very introspective stuff like boundaries and, you know.
Yeah, that's really good to know though for yourself. What have I learned? I think it's not something I learned. It's more something I epiphany as in like I love doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing nothing in my room. I love playing video games with my friends. I love feeling like nothing is going on. And I think because of my job and the choices I make in life, sometimes it's hard to like catch a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though, let's say, I would travel, I would work, or I would try and do work, but this felt like for me, it felt like a very much a well earned but also a forced vacation.
Mm.
If that, yeah, it felt like a good time to energize, but also like you said, like reevaluate my priorities, appreciating who I have in my life, seeing who is there for me,
Mm-hmm.
or seeing what matters to me. Um, but also to feel that the connection I've had with people wasn't just on some work stuff, for example, but people just hitting me up or I'm hitting people up, and to experience that human connection that that you might have met someone in a random country, like you had a really cool time there with someone, and then the homie calls you like, hey, how have you been? And that makes me feel like, oh, cool, that you know what I mean, like that feels very fulfilling in a sense too, as in like all the friendships I have are meaningful and not as flat as I've experienced with other people.
Right. Yeah.
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 It's
Yeah.
almost like a filter went over my life and like just took everything away that wasn't that important to
Mm,
me.
yeah, which is important. You know, I feel like even that is kind of like a something that helps you kind of recenter your foundation and like keep going forward from there. It's like, oh, I have these genuine relationships in my life, and this is what matters to me. And oh, I actually want to make sure that I do nothing sometimes because I see how much I actually enjoy it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, the last question that I want to ask you is what do you feel like you are currently overcoming?
Oh, what am I becoming? Um, I think for me personally, what I'm overcoming right now is the fact that you can't control life. Life sometimes might go opposite way of that you intended it to go. Um, and it's basically this is accepting things, and I think that's sometimes for me hard to overcome because I like to be in control. I don't give up in anything, but sometimes I feel like giving up sometimes is the right step into something maybe going that way, if that makes sense. Like as in like sometimes you got to brake instead of pushing gas to go further, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something I'm overcoming as we speak in many forms of my life.
Mm-hmm.
um, I like I said, like as a kid, I loved being by myself, but I noticed during COVID that I felt very lonely a lot of times, and I'm starting to like I'm overcoming in a sense to like not feel lonely because there's people that care about me, but it's also like almost describing or like telling me you're not lonely, but it's okay to feel lonely sometimes. Because I feel like sometimes if I think about things like that, I don't want to feel weak in senses in some way of like, oh, I don't want to think like that. But because I'm on paper, I think that me and a lot of people could like give Dr. Phil answers to everybody, like, oh yeah, you know, you got to do this and that, self care, self love. But I think during COVID, it was easy to think like that or like to have the solution in your mind, but it's a difference as in how do I execute that and how do I apply it to myself? It's
Mm-hmm.
just because it sounds good on paper doesn't mean it works per se for you. So there's like a lot. That's what I'm working on right now. Instead of like saying generic advice to myself while I'm in my mind about something, is to like, all right, but how do you feel? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, so that nothing crazy.
Yeah. It's nothing crazy, but it's like everything important, like those are very important overcomings and self-realizations. And now that you bring that up, I would say that that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned
Mm,
is that I can't control everything.
nope.
And as hard as it may be, it's a lesson to really appreciate,
Yep. It takes a lot of stress off of your back when you decide to believe in that.
Yeah.
Because let's say it's about other people, you can't control how other people would react to things. You can't control how people would respond to things or look at, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and I think in that sense, or in even with COVID, I didn't want this to happen, but you just gotta accept it at the end of the day. You could be sad
Mm-hmm.
about it all day, like I think everybody has been, but
Mm-hmm.
at some point you gotta switch that mindset of that the glass is half full, half empty into the glass is half full,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all here, and that's, I think, acceptance is peace of mind and not to worry too much about the past or the future because all we have is now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all we have is now. Beautiful, beautiful way to bring this full circle. Do you feel like there's anything that you wanted to share that you didn't get to?
No, I felt like you asked a lot of questions I've never been asked in a sort of situation like this. So thank you for that. Even make me think about something like, how do I think about things? I've been wanting to ask you questions back, but sometimes I'm like, should I, or is that not how this goes? I don't like to talk about myself too much, so I'm like, I want to ask it back, but I don't know if that's this type of podcast or.
Oh no, yeah, it totally is. And I should probably tell my guests that because like I just want this to be conversational and
Uh,
so yeah, the reciprocated questions are definitely welcomed.
okay, hell yeah. Okay, that's not just now I know though. No, but I think I've said everything I wanted to say. I feel like we've got to know each other a bit better during this phone call.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I feel like we touched on, professional, personal, and, I just want to reiterate just my gratitude for you and your time, and also just you pursuing your passion, like something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is just like how important it is for us to pursue our passions because that is actually our contribution of goodness to the world. Like that is our form of activism. When you do what you love, like that ends up being your form of activism, your form of like changing the world in a positive way. So whenever I come across people who are really doing that,
Mhm.
I have to thank them because you are an example for others, and
Oh, making me.
and and your work is genuinely just really great. Like I love the way that you story tell. So I'm just grateful to be able to have this conversation, and I look forward to sharing it with others.
Oh yeah. And just to touch based on what you just said, I think following your passions, I think you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you too, because I think people elevate from other people's energy. And I think by me doing what I love the most and taking these risks, I think I inspired some of my friends. I feel like I may have inspired people I've come into crossing with. But same way goes for me. If someone does something really like, oh wow, you've always wanted to do that, and now you're doing it, amazing. That's the best feeling to get to see someone talk about something and then actually also doing it. And I'm like, wow, or surprising me, even like, oh, I didn't know you do that.
Yeah.
And that's something that gasses me up a lot. And you're right, yeah, I think that's important from your surroundings, and that's in a way like how you said. I've never looked at it like that, but that's in a sense uh, putting work into your own activism towards the betterment of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.